Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It looks like there's 62 of us online. This is the final webinar of the series of the ACE webinars that we've done, and it has actually come at a really good time because of the announcement this week. But we have got a packed agenda. As you can see, we've got quite a few presenters, and there will be case studies. So I'm not going to speak for much longer. And I am actually going to move us along. But before we do that, just a few housekeeping rules. I know that you've all attended, or most of you have attended this webinar in this format. You can see all the buttons on your right-hand side. So you've got the computer audio. If you can't hear, then you can dial in because the link has a dial-in as well. So you can listen over the phone. You won't be able to see yourselves, unlike a meeting, but you would be able to see all the presenters. Anything else? No. So we know that Digital Age project has been designed to support providers like us, and all the resources that have been developed has been done by the sector for the sector. And we had recent guidelines from the government which said that universities and adult education settings should consider moving to increased level of online learning. And I know that we've done really well, because when we went into lockdown in March, most of us managed to move our provision online, whether we had the know-how or not, or the technology or not, we managed to do it. So now this almost seems like, yeah, that's fine, we can do it. So let's hear the final webinar. And the purpose of this one is to provide an overview of the underpinning technology. So we've all used different technology which we weren't used to. Some use Google, some use Microsoft, Zoom. It is to hear from the sector what they have to say. And just bear in mind that this is not actually giving you a solution. This is to allow you to choose what works best for you in your service, for your learners, given your circumstances. So I'm now going to hand you over to Sue, who will take us through some of the slides, and then we'll have different speakers. Thanks, Sue.
Okay, thanks, Deepa. As Deepa said, this is the last one in the series, and all the previous ones are now online on the HOLEX website. Now, this webinar explains a guidance document that we've done about the technology infrastructure. And it's been designed by a working group who I really want to thank. We had 3 meetings, and with the help of Caroline, we were able to push forward with it. And it's a bit of a review of existing advice and materials. It has case studies in, and it's got materials for you to share. Now, if we actually printed the whole document with all the annexes, we'd probably be in 100+ pages. But the guidance document will be available this afternoon, and it's there for you to pick and choose. And like Deepa said, what we found doing this particular one on infrastructure and the technological base you need, there isn't one answer. And that's what we're going to pull out really in the next sort of 45 minutes. There is a bit of the scope of the document is quite wide. But it does have its limitations, so don't go into the document thinking I'm going to be able to pick this up, and HOLEX have actually said this is the best way to do it. It's not quite like that. You will see there's lots of questions you need to ask, and you need to fit in with what you have already, and have a plan about what you want to go to. And you really do need to consider your circumstances, what's right for your circumstances, and what already you have in your area, and what your local authority or what the major college you are in is actually doing. So when we look at technology, these days there's nothing much you can do without a bit of technology. So you need it for your marketing, and I've been amazed through lockdown how you've managed to change the way that your websites look like. Most of you now have got something right up front saying, this is our online offer. Then it's about information, advice and guidance. So you're not having people now turn up where they can talk to a careers person. They're using your website for that, but many of you have adapted that now and have telephone consultations, were absolutely amazing. Again, with enrolment, many of you have now moved into a fully automated enrolment system that lends itself then to not only do the ILR, but it collects information for the teacher, and it gives the teacher information about their sort of class lists, etc., and telephone contacts and that type of thing. There's also the technology to support diagnostic assessment. I've sort of thought recently that diagnostic assessment has become more important with an online offer, because without that, you know, you're not seeing the person, face to face. You're not really able to read what they're thinking. So the diagnostic assessment processes that are out there are really helping you find out, you know, what you need to do your role and what the tutor needs. Then learning, again, at the beginning of March, you know, when we talked about online learning, I think there was as many definitions as there was services. And when you look at the schools material, it does now basically fall into 3 groupings, as does the university offer. So you first of all is using IT to support face-to-face classroom teaching. So that's using IT to determine and support homework in the classroom, to give examples. So that's support for face-to-face. And then I think the most popular form now is blended, whereby, you know, you might have face-to-face, but then you might have the next class the week after is actually online. And that way you get, you know, you're able to help yourself over the sort of safety issues around COVID. And then virtual, when it's absolutely everything online. And again, you know, with yesterday's sort of announcement about COVID, that, you know, adults, anything in adult settings needs to consider moving more online. I think we're now in that 3rd space. And then the other things you need technology for is assessment. You know, we still don't know where the awarding bodies will come out next year, and how much of that will be online and how much of that will be with, you know, cameras and all sorts of technology to support it. And then we've got our communication structures for staff, students. I'm finding that really interesting now, the role of social media, difficult to manage, but I don't think you can stop a class setting up their own WhatsApp group. So it's really interesting, the whole line now about communication. It's a whole sort of strand of work in itself. And then finally, you've got your administration and data and collection and reporting. Now, when we did this strand of work, you know, we looked at what technology can support each one of those. And it was quite important to sort of begin to recognise this now in sort of some form of a whole system. And Karen came up with this really, I think, neat diagram that shows the hardware, the connections and the software. But what's really important, you know, whatever systems you've got in place, is for you to do that integration, to make them work together. And sometimes you're not going to be able to do that for all your systems, but that's what, you know, you as the sort of heads of service and managers need to do. But it all needs to be underpinned by trained and capable staff. And that's another thing we should do, is applaud the sector, applaud teachers. I think teachers have been amazing throughout this. You know, there are people that I've known personally who, you know, really didn't have an iPad until March, and now are doing all their teaching online with cameras and sort of loving it, and have become technological experts all within 5 months. So I think we all should applaud our teachers. It's been a really hard time, but they've done well. Now, I've got some polls for you. We're really quite interested in this. So Charlie's opened the poll. So how well do you think your underpinning technology systems are meeting your services needs? Very well, still not quite sure, unsure, or not well. Just tick 1, please.
Okay, everyone, if you can just get your votes in. We've got just over half of you have voted. Any more for any more? Okay, we've got nearly 80%, so I'm going to close and reveal the results. Okay, so 10% of you said very well, 63% are saying quite well, 11% are unsure, and 16% not well. So 63% of you, the absolute majority, think that your underpinning technology systems are meeting your organisational needs quite well.
Well done, and that's really quite different from what it was back right at the beginning of this. And I've got a second poll for you, and I'm interested in knowing what the main issues are. Although it seems like a lifetime away, the Minister was kind enough to phone on Saturday night to ask me what I thought about the new statement in the guidance and to explain where it came from. She did listen to the concerns, but I am now really interested in what you still think are the main issues and barriers to doing more. I mean, if 63% thinking you're doing all right, but that's quite good. But I'm sure there is a sort of determining factor there, and you probably need more support. So what is it that you need?
Okay, so if everybody votes, for some reason it says what are the main, that is supposed to say what are the main issues. So if you could all just select one: funding to buy equipment, lack of technical support, staff resistance to moving online, or none of the above. So if there's anyone else who'd like to vote, got 65% of you. Okay, we're nearly 80%, so I'm going to close and reveal the results. Okay, so you're quite mixed between, or quite evenly split between the top two. So 38% of you have said funding to buy equipment, 32% of you have said lack of technical support, 12% of you said resistance to moving online from staff, and 18% of said none of the above. So around about a third of you saying funding to buy equipment and lack of technical support.
Okay, that's really interesting. And the 18% who said, I got some feedback from you. 18% who said none of the above. Would you mind putting on the sort of chat what your issues are? That would be really useful. Thanks for that. So if we now move on with that bit of background, the guidance covers software choices, connectivity, technical solutions, communicating with learners, communicating with staff, and support for staff and students, procurement and outsourcing, and then there's 10 key tips, which I will come to at the end of this presentation. Now I'm going to move on to Carolyn, who's going to just talk quickly about what are the issues you need to consider when thinking about your software.
Hi everyone. Yes, I think there are quite a number of issues to consider when you're thinking about your software. And as Sue and Deepa have both mentioned, it's part of a whole ecosystem. So you need to think about, first of all, I think, are you going to have one main standardized system for all your staff and learners, or are you going to have a range to select from? So a platform that might be useful for one group of learners might not work for another group of learners. I suppose an obvious thought is learners with learning difficulties might struggle with a platform that's designed for higher level learners. So you just need to think about who your learners are and whether or not they're going to be able to access it. An e-portfolio, for example, that might be designed for apprenticeships might not work as well for other provision. An example of that is that some apprenticeship e-portfolios will only allow you the number of qualifications that you'll have in an apprenticeship, whereas we know that in adult and community learning, people might do a number of courses over a year or over a couple of years, so it might not fit very well. How might you integrate the systems together to form a whole learning system? And how will you deploy that system to staff and learners? Is it in line with your corporate and service policies for online learning? Obviously, way back when, seems like a distant past now, there was a webinar about your policy. Does what you're trying to do fit in with that policy? And very importantly, your organisational policy, which for most people out here obviously will be the local authority, and some will be much more flexible than others, I'm sure, as you all know. Will it require any installation on the device or devices, or is it fully web-based access? And is it appropriately secure, protecting the data of staff and learners? Key things to think about in terms of software. For connectivity, this I think has been very problematic for many of us and for many learners and even for staff. Do the learners have sufficient access to the internet? And can they afford the data required to access your online content? I know before I retired in the summer, some of our young people, yes, they had a phone, but they were on pay-as-you-go data. It was costing them much more than they could afford to access until we were able to give them some resource towards that. Have you met the requirements for connectivity for young people? So as you may know, if you work with 16 to 18s, there are different requirements and expectations. Have you looked at and identified any public access options for learners, whether that be in a library or in a supermarket or other public space? And do they know how to use that public access safely? Have you given them information about what will happen if the internet goes down during an online session? I can't believe that there's any of us who hasn't been in a meeting where suddenly connectivity's become a problem. Do your learners know what to do, what you will do, and so on when that happens? And sometimes you might be able to improve your connection with a wired option rather than Wi-Fi. Do they have that option? Does their equipment allow that? And if it does, then can you get an adapter to allow that to happen? So there are lots of things there in terms of connectivity that you might need to consider. And then procurement. I know, again, this is something that's very, very specific to individual local authorities. Each one has its own hoops that it requires you to go through and jump through. So you need, and I'm sure you all are, to understand fully what those procurement processes are. But it is important that you understand them, because different organisations give you different levels of autonomy. And are there already some partnerships that you could build onto that result in good value deals being available to you? So certainly when I was still in Newcastle, the corporate schools IT team were sourcing equipment for the schools, got a really good deal that we could piggyback onto the back of. Does the equipment that you purchase meet your policy expectations? Is it compatible with everything else that you're running? And can you get a good deal on mobile data? Early on, the prices that we were quoted were absolutely astronomical. They came down as time went on. So quite a few things to worry about when you're purchasing equipment, but I think they're all hurdles that we can get through.
Thanks, Caroline. That's really useful. So as we said, you know, in the guidance document, we ask these sort of questions, and we do give some, we highlight where you can go to see good practice and where you can see other people's solutions. So we'll now move on to our case studies. And I'd like to thank straight away Carl, Angela, Barn and Terry for doing this. It's always a bit disconcerting to speak to your peers and then also have to do it online. So we'll start off with Carl from Gateshead. So over to you, Carl.
Thank you very much, Sue. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carl Newbrook. I am the Business Improvement and Quality Lead for Gateshead Council Learning Skills. What I'm going to do today is just go over basically our story over the last 7-8 months and what we've actually done so far. Like everyone, I think this hit us at quite a little bit unawares. We did have, just looking at the slides here, we did have a Google Classroom, and it's actually called G Suite for Education, already available to all teaching staff. However, we had that a few years ago, and obviously we've been using it subtly ever since. But it was never being used effectively by everyone, and in some cases it wasn't really used as effectively as it could be. However, like many people who are watching today, you would have had the news a few days before that we were going to be going into lockdown on the Monday. What we did was the last couple of days of the end of the week, we just increased the number of Google Classroom workshops. We had those who were using Google Classroom effectively running workshops to all of our teaching colleagues. Basically, what we wanted to insist on was that we worked with what we already had, and we liaised with all the partners we knew for support. We had Google resellers who we'd speak to if we had any problems, networking groups, other providers, things like web forums of other Google Classroom users. We pretty much just went all in on the current software that we had. Sue, could you move to the next slide, please? Oh, thank you. Sorry, Sue, could you move back one? My fault. One of the things I've got to say, and it was mentioned earlier, the teachers responded very, very quickly. They were able to continue to engage all of our learners. We were all incredibly impressed. Everyone was just very much just ran with it. Everyone got really involved very, very quickly. We involved the learners wherever we could, giving them advice and support to log on and use the service as well. What we tried to do was initially we try to create a business as usual attitude. We use Google Classroom and video conferencing, Google Meet, and we pretty much try to keep everything basically everyone engaged as much as we can. We were able to move over 100 courses online within the first term, which was quite a feat. While moving our business online, we also what we do within Learning Skills is we have an annual award ceremony, which we would normally have a bit of a lavish event with a hall and with a typical award ceremony. We took that on. We took that online. We hired a film crew. We had Steve Furnell, who's a local radio presenter, and our manager, senior manager, Sonia Anderson. And they went with the film crew door to door and visited the winners at the doorsteps, a bit like the Dad's Doorstep Challenge from those who remember in the 90s, and visited them with the awards, and were able to actually we had it all filmed, had it all on YouTube, and it was an online event. We continue to support our colleagues online as well. Everyone online. We obviously emails was a huge obviously use, as well as Teams. When we got back after the summer, when we started coming back in, we then started continuing the Google Classroom workshops at a slightly higher level as well. So troubleshoot ideas that we were having and troubleshoot problems we were having before summer. So we were able to develop that Google Classroom service that we were providing at the time. Adapting to change. The greatest challenge that we had, obviously, and it was change management, and it would be with anywhere. Obviously, ICT. Some are more confident than others with ICT, and I think it was just ensuring that we had as much communication as we possibly could while there, and also ensuring that everyone knew we were all learning this together. It wasn't a couple of people who were much further ahead teaching everyone else. We all were fumbling through it together. Those who had more experience became champions and helped others as well and supported others. It was very much a involving everyone process. And I think one of the things that we want to make sure was we want to keep our pedagogies the same. Despite online learning, we wanted to make sure that learners were interacting with each other, that there was peer and self-assessed work, that people were using that people were using group work, etc., using online whiteboard software for group work, mind maps and things like that. It was really important that we kept that the same. Development of this new academic year, we now provide learners with obviously a dedicated Google login. We've now increased our use of this app quite a lot, so they can now basically log in using their Google Google login that we provide, and they can get access to a lot of the other software that the software provides, such as Google Meet, Jamboard. If you haven't used Jamboard yet, it's brilliant for online learning. It's a whiteboard tool. Our emails are able to communicate directly with tutors. We also offer now hybrid and blended learning for the first time. We also offer fully online courses. We've never offered fully online courses before, but we've now got the infrastructure to do so, just from the necessity of having to do it over the last 7 months. We've very recently developed our quality assurance processes as well to include online courses. So these actually link in with our other TLA, teaching and learning assessment processes. So very similar to the observations, etc. process, or linked in with the digital only process. And finally, as a bit of a sort of a shout out, we were praised by Gillian Keegan MP, who was the Minister for Apprenticeships and Skills, for our Return to Learn plan, which incorporated all this as well. And a lot of this is what we've done is with the advice that you'll find in the guidance that's being produced as part of this webinar. But that's it from me. Thank you very much, everyone.
Well done, Carl, fantastic. And it really is worth looking at Gateshead Awards ceremony. It is fantastic, and it just shows how innovative people can be when they need to do. And Carl, it's not just the Minister who thought, well, what we've done is good, we all do. So well done, Carl, thank you. If we could move on now to Angela. Angela's going to tell us her story from York Learning, which is in the city of York. I've been teasing Angela, saying that it's really easy in York because it's all within a wall.
We are York. Hello, everybody. So yes, I'm City of York Council. York is quite sprawling, actually. So although we're a small city compared to many of you, we are still quite sprawling as well around the outer areas. So my journey with our council IT department, because one of the messages that came clearly was a lot of you were struggling with how to talk to your IT departments, how to get what you need from them. So I'm going to talk to you about my experience. So I was an IT curriculum manager, so I have a lot of IT experience, and I have worked with the IT department in the council for many years now by building a relationship with them. So I've become a consistent point of contact. And one of the first things I did with them was to clearly separate what are our council equipment and what are our learner equipment. So clearly separate where you can, who receives your council equipment, so your devices that connect to the council network, and who should not, so the learners. And we did that partially because it meant I could loan laptops to learners because they had no connection with learner accessing any CYC information. So first of all, we did that. So now I clearly go to the council for any laptop devices for tutors, and I procure and source my own laptops for learners with contracts with outside contractors, which include support and setup. And then I have an admin team, within the admin team, somebody helps source them, loan them, and get all the paperwork back to do that. Because they see that I have a clear process for that, they trust me to do that. I do all clear risk assessments to go with it. So I'm the consistent point of contact, and I work with them to negotiate what we're going to do. So yes, at the moment I am head of service, but previously I was just the curriculum manager for IT. And it's not just, it was a big job. But it enabled me to talk some of their language and understand what was or wasn't a barrier. And I also, because I wasn't the head of service, I had some freedom. So I could go ahead and I created a Google Classroom without asking anybody. I paid for it, because all you've got to do is pay for your hosting license. So I did all that over the weekend and created our account. IT didn't find out we had it for over a year. And I think that was actually the best way forward for us, because it enabled us to get there. We had it. It was like, oops, sorry. And we just carried on with it. And it's worked really well for us. We've had it for a long time, and we were able to swiftly switch to it fully with lockdown. Make sure you do good risk assessments for everything you do, so your loaning, for accessing USB sticks, even to loaning out equipment, to whether you've got an online hosted website, everything like that. If they will have confidence with you if they know you are doing those risk assessments. And when it comes to externally hosted systems, they want to know where are they based? Are they in the UK or are they out there in Poland or whatever? They don't like that. So you need to be sure about where things are being hosted, or think about the information that is being hosted. Is it your council information, or is it just learner information? And you need to just have that conversation with them to make sure they understand that there is a difference. So yes, you appreciate their job has to protect the security of council information. That is their job. That's why they are challenging. But on the other side, you've got to do your job, and it's just about learner information. It's to do work. It's nothing secure. It's nothing, you know, that they need to worry about as far as a council's perspective is concerned. And so you just need to show them that you have got a secure site, secure access, you make sure passwords are changed, and you put in systems in place to look after it. And I find if I've done those things, I continue to have a good relationship with my IT department, and they continue to give me some rope to introduce new things. So like Zoom, we had that before anybody else in the council, but to support IT, we did the council's training on Zoom for everybody to get them all up and running. So we helped the councillors and everything like that, which gave us quite a high profile at that time, but it also it supported the IT team. So it was a bit of like a quid pro quo. And we'll do the same with Teams when we go on to that. And that's it from me. I was told to keep it really short and sweet. So thank you.
Well done, Angela. And I think your statement about sometimes you just have to go for it is probably quite right. However, we can't advocate that you all go and do your own thing. I think your key message is that you've got to work with your IT department, and you've got to get them to understand the difference in activities. And I think now, in a strange way, the message that came out of government at the weekend is actually going to help you with your IT departments, because it makes very clear that you do have to work online. This is not you making it up. You have to work online. So thanks for that, Angela. That's brilliant. So we're going to move on now to Varna. I copied this front page. It wasn't something that Varna did for me, because I really like it, because I like the little men that says, oh, women in class and online. I do think that that's a really important message for you all now, that, you know, your adult education, your adult learning is clearly seen, that it's in these both phases. And it's lovely because there's nothing talking about closed centres on this front sheet. So Varna, over to you, please.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Varna Patel, and I'm the Skills and Development Officer for Employability, ICT and Digital Skills. Today, I'm going to be talking about how Blackburn with Darwen is overcoming digital challenges. Before COVID-19, Blackburn with Darwen Adult Learning only delivered face-to-face classroom-based teaching and learning. That was from March 2020. So that meant no online teaching and learning platform. Tutors had little or no skills and knowledge of teaching online. The service mainly using face-to-face or paper-based system to collect data, booking learners on courses and assessing learners. Collecting learner details electronically was not in place. So this had an opportunity for our management information system to trial online enrolment and a booking system through Eventbrite, which we did and was proven successful. We can improve it further. Hence, as a service, Blackburn with Darwen Adult Learning experience of digitalised teaching and learning was extremely limited. Quite early on, we realised that the online courses was a way forward. And so we all started to look at ways. The tutors started to dabble and explore online learning platforms. These were the tutors that felt confident in IT and confident to doing something different. So what they were looking at was G Suites and Google Classroom, which they looked around and seemed a good option. The service requested G Suite and delivery using Google Classroom, but denied, as MS Teams available across the council. So that was the only option that we had. So again, we were driven, we were passionate. We thought, no, we need to put something together for our learners. The learners need us. We need to do some online provision. So we got on board the MS Teams Lite. We launched it. It was a new way of communication and online delivery. However, this has limitations. Unlike the full MS Teams package, which can allow collaborative work with learners, we only had the light version. So again, we're actually dealing with very limited resources, but we carry on and still want to make sure that we've got some learning for our learners. So myself and the ICT tutor, who was quite savvy in ICT, developed MS training packages, not only for our tutors and staff, but also we ended up delivering it to staff across the council, which proved very, very successful. The staff response of this new way of delivery was very positive, and training started for online delivery. So the experienced tutors developed MS forms and MS quizzes and showcased how they can be implemented in online sessions. And they made it look so easy. You can do this and this is what happens. And if they do assessments, it's all collated and it comes out in a report and it's there for you. The assessments are self-marked, so the learners get to know what they've got in their initial assessment or their summative assessment. So all sounded good and it was delivered in a very positive way. So the tutors were getting excited with a new way of teaching and learning, engaging learners. Quickly a support net was established. Firstly, one-to-one, we're supporting people one-to-one and trialling that out. Our skills development officer supporting online sessions to help tutors build confidence and address technical issues. The most common one is, you are on mute, which I think we all have. Slowly from that, we developed 3 digital champions. We each delivered a series of topic-based sessions to support online delivery and to support with innovative, creative ways of delivery, the best way that we could with the resources that we had. The tutors were then buddied up to support each other with online delivery. We furthered the buddying up system through learning support workers by training them and buddying them up with tutors. So in a short time frame, by June, we had a one-to-one online support system for digital support for learners that are at home by telephone or by email. In July, Blackburn Darwin Adult Learning were delivering online sessions across curriculum, not just employability. We quickly did an online summer programme, which proved successful and showed that we were delivering in different ways and meeting the needs of others. We now got an autumn term, a combination of classroom-based, online and blended courses on offer. Tutors are now delivering online courses and learning support workers are learning how to deliver in online sessions. Tutors are now uploading course documentation and resources onto SharePoint. Everything, as I said earlier, was paper-based. Now it's online. Course files are online. Our website is developing with pre-recorded video clips for learners to access at their own time in various curriculum areas. We now have an online booking system through Eventbrite, electronic enrolment forms for learners to complete. We have come a long, long way, and I am so proud, I'm going to cry here, so proud to be with such an ambitious, driven team. From something of nothing, we've created online delivery, so it's wonderful to be part of that team. We did all of this using MS Teams Lite as an online learning platform. Blackburn with Darwin Adult Learning live in hope of online delivery using Google Classroom. And if I could, I would like to put our website address on the chat for everyone just to have a look at and to see the journey that Blackburn with Darwin Learning have actually come across, because it's a magnificent journey that we've all been on. So thank you very much for listening.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you for telling us your story. And in a way, that's been a real journey done in real time over the last sort of 16 weeks. So well done. And it's fantastic that you've got to where you've got to. And actually, your council should be very, very proud of what you've managed to do within the limitations they give to you. Okay, so now we're going to move on to Terry from Kent, which is a different type of story in a way. That I need to put Terry's presentation up on the screen. There you are, Terry. It's a different type of story because Kent is one of our biggest counties, and especially for adult education. So over to you, Terry.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Terry Burgess from Community Learning and Skills at Kent County Council. We were already running a small amount of online GCSE courses before the March lockdown was announced. And when it was announced, some tutors, for example, in areas such as languages, were able to adapt very quickly to the situation, and some even had classes running online the very next day. For example, intermediate Portuguese was running the next day. And so following that, more and more classes were included within our Zoom offer. We then discovered via an arbitrary process that the council had made the decision not to have to allow us to communicate via Zoom with any council customers. And this definition of customers included all of our learners. So as you can imagine, that was immediately a very scary situation for us. We then began the process of tracking back across the council, and as Sue mentioned, we're one of the larger councils in England, to find out the source of that decision, which was the head of ICT and the head of ICT security. And so we managed to book a meeting with the head of ICT via Teams, of course, and in the course of that meeting, we were successfully able to persuade them that CLS would be able to manage and mitigate the security risks for its users posed by the Zoom platform. The reason we were successful is because CLS, as a recognised educational institution, already had an account with Zoom which was separate from KCC's, and because of that, we were able to control our account and completely ring-fence it from KCC's. We also, within CLS, have our own substantial ICT systems team who are able to engage in these actions very swiftly and effectively for us. But critical to the meeting with the ICT, the head of ICT within the council, was the fact that we produced very rapidly a risk assessment which went through in great detail exactly how we were going to mitigate all of the risks that the council perceived. Once we got that agreement from KCC, we then took control of our own Zoom policy settings, which included local administrative control of the platform, as well as things like the sign-on process, password management, our own internal staff training and support for people working within CLS, a clear communication with our learners on how the security issues were being managed, and we did that through the enrolment process as well as our website and other forms of communication. And since then, because we've managed to mitigate and manage all of these risks and issues, our Zoom program has continued to flourish. And funnily enough, we've yet to receive any form of complaint from our learners concerning security issues with Zoom. So I want to stress the three aspects of all of this that allowed us to segregate Zoom out and use it in this way is because we had our full-time workforce, which included ICT experts within it who were able to argue persuasively around the risk assessment process, a wide range of very willing to adapt sessional tutors and the infrastructure that CLS itself has, which is separate from KCC. And to this day, we have currently around 1,000 classes operating via the Zoom platform. Thank you.
Brilliant, Terry. That's fantastic. And there are similarities, but there's also difference in sizes. This particular webinar is concentrating on like the infrastructure and how you get permissions to do things. But all of you that are listening, I would suggest that you go online and actually look at all 4 of their websites, because they are really very exciting, and the offer is very good. And in Kent particularly, you've also, Terry, if you want to explain, you're also doing full fee activity online as well, which I think puts you in a sort of a bit of an unusual camp. And how did you come to that decision?
They're not full fee in the sense that they're full cost recovery outside of the ESFA, but so it's the normal fee rates that we charge, although we have picked up interest outside of England from not only Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, but from places like Australia. And so we've implemented, because they won't appear on the ILR, we've added an additional charge for those learners. But for everybody else, they're still paying the same amount they would have if it was a physical class, and we're returning those learners through the ILR as well. But there is obviously in the future another conversation and even a business model to be considered around online learning and what direction we're going to go with that, and that depends on all kinds of things.
Okay, so that's quite exciting. I can see you with a new strapline now, calling yourself the international provider. Is that right?
Well, Kent ceases to be a place in some senses, and KAE, or Kent Adult Education, which is the community learning strand of all this, it becomes more of a brand name than a reference to where you're taking part in the class.
Yeah, absolutely. So well done to the 4 of you for telling your stories. Now, what came out of this strand's work was that there are messages that you can all take, and what we've got here is sort of 10 tips. And I know some of you will be sitting there reading these and think, oh, well, that's obvious. It is obvious, but it still was worth stating, because I think some people have tried maybe to build too big too quick and not actually looked at what's there. So really the 10 tips are: build on what you have, take your staff with you, test and review systems, build on staff skills, let them develop a bit in their own time, but then build on it and support them. Set up a student buddy system. I mean, online learning is a bit insular and can be a bit lonely, so students need a bit of help in buddying up and making the odd friend. Develop a group of sort of digital champions to support staff. Make systems easy to navigate, and always think of the sort of user when you're thinking about them. Build back feedback systems right from the beginning. So, you know, there's no reason, like when we do these webinars, that we ask for feedback immediately. And when you're going forward in the future, thinking about quality mechanisms, that might be one of the easiest way to do it. Make sure that anything you use can be accessed from a tablet or even a phone, because we've still got a problem with digital access, and we've got, you know, 20–30% of the population, and probably more in some of our student areas, where students haven't got devices. And then also consider working with other partner organisations, like your local university. Look, there might be a role for universities going forward after the FE White Paper about, you know, being community places. And so you might find that they are open to actually establishing in a way that you can piggyback on their systems. So that's our 10 tips. We will be having the guidance. I think it'll go on our website this afternoon, or if not this week. So please look at it and please use it. And now we've got time for questions.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a few questions on the chat as well, but let's pick these ones up first. So how do we fund the infrastructure costs of going online? So do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I mean, you've all done it in different ways, and you've all sort of managed it. We've got, when we talk to DFE now, they think that they flex the Learning Support Fund, the Learner Support Fund enough so that you can even begin to buy devices out of that. I'm still not absolutely sure, but I do think that going forward, you will need a different business model, because maybe you won't need to put costs into buildings or into infrastructure, and you can put costs then into your online development. I think at the moment you know you're all stuck to the way your spending patterns of last year. I think that you now need to start thinking about that in a different way. I mean, Deepa, you might want to think, you know, you might want to answer that question yourself.
Yeah, I mean, and another thing to do is actually don't be hesitant to ask your local authority, because following on from what Angie said, I mean, the local authority are actually sometimes more receptive than we think. And I think historically, we work, a lot of us, you know, we work in a silo. But if you actually go back and say, and if they then put you in a cycle of their capital spend, you may be able to get something from the local authority as well. They just need to know about it and build them, because every local authority has their own capital budget, you know, and you just need to be in that cycle.
And you need to build on that as well, because, you know, like Brent has this amazing 106 agreement this year, where part of that agreement was for a new, I think, housing estate. And on that housing estate, you know, they're going to have a new learning environment. So those types of things now don't have to be physical buildings. They could be a virtual learning environment that you get out. So Deepa's right, talk to your councillors, but also your combined authority stroke LEP, you know, 50% of you now are in, or will be by next year, in a combined authority. They have a capital fund, and you need to be in there marked up and say, look, you know, if we're going to continue on our digital journey, this time next year we need XXX, and don't be shy in doing that.
Mm-hmm. So are there external organisations that will provide a full system? I mean, we've heard three very different systems. We've heard about Google, Microsoft Teams and Zoom. And I mean, getting in touch with some of the bigger companies may actually help you to find a package that works for you. So I don't know if anyone else has direct experience of actually working with an external organisation who's come in. Any of the panel members? No? Okay, so how do we sustain our systems? Now, that's a good one, actually, because systems by their very nature are evolving. They're continuously evolving, and sustaining the system means keeping up to date, really, ensuring that, you know, we are doing whatever. I mean, system updates are really, really important, and reviewing and monitoring that is it still fit for purpose. So what might work now may not work in 2 years' time. I mean, we know with our phones, you know, the phones are out of date within a year or two. So systems have to be reviewed constantly and made sure that they're fit for purpose. How do we keep up to date? Again, you know, I mean, forums like this are fantastic, and sharing good practice is fantastic, and listening to other people, you know, reaching out to other people. And I think the case studies are, you know, a case in point, that when you see other colleagues, you know, who've been successful in implementing something, then, you know, you just reach out to them and say, is there any way, you know, we can make it work for us? And do you think there's a way we will operate in the future? Well, I think we will, but I'd quite like to hear what colleagues have to say. Sue, do you think we'll operate this way in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if you, any of you have seen yet the Learning and Work survey they've done about COVID. I mean, there has been an uptake in adult learning via online. You know, all sorts of adult learning. We've done it ourselves. You know, we've all learned to bake the cake that we thought we'd never be able to bake, that type of thing. However, I would put some caveats around online learning. It has its place. But I don't think people get that light bulb moment when they're not with other people. So if you think about the interaction you get through a class and a classroom teacher, it's that excitement about learning. You also get into that sort of peer competition, so you push yourself a bit further. You actually develop creative thinking. That's really difficult to do online. And I think our challenge of the future is that we will have to live within a sort of COVID environment. But we also have to think about, if we are going to be just online, how do we make it innovative? How do we make it interactive? How do we ensure integration? How do we ensure that we push people and raise their aspirations? So I do think we'll probably work in a blended way, but I also think we've got to spend more time. I think Carl mentioned the pedagogy elements of this. It's pedagogy, but it's also how do we remain inspirational?
Yeah, but also to pick up on Terry's point, operating like this does mean that was your oyster. You can actually attract learners from further afield and internationally. I mean, we're a very tiny provider in Sutton, and the amount of refunds we've had to give for learners from Sutton Coldfield, but if we're online, we can actually deliver to learners in Sutton Coldfield as well, and not just in Sutton, in London. So there are advantages as well. So I've got a few questions here. One is from Philip Bedford to say, what's the best way to migrate mass learner emails or create emails en masse on Google? I mean, the advantage again of doing a webinar is I've got two screens, and while I've been reading the questions, I've got a hangout going with my IT manager and asking him the questions so I can sound well informed. And apparently there is some scripting involved. And if you do need some support, Philip, then please get in touch with my IT manager, and I can give you the details after the call. Another one is, how much does Google Classroom hosting cost? Now, we are using a non-premium education version, so it's actually free. It costs nothing. So that may be a reason to go to Google Classroom or the Google Suites, actually. And the final question, and I think, Terry, this one might be for you. Are learners happy to pay the full fee for online delivery only?
So that again.
Are learners happy to pay the full fee for online delivery, only online delivery?
Yes, but yes, the fee structure, as I said, is the same as it was for physical classes, and we haven't detected anyone saying, this should be less for me as a consequence. There are of course big advantages for learners not having to make long journeys on a cold, wet Tuesday night. It's to their advantage that they can simply finish their class and be at home within a second. So it works both ways.
Brilliant, Deepa. We've just got a couple of minutes, so I think we'll press on now.
Yeah.
Brilliant, those questions. And if anybody else has got any questions, just send them in and we'll get answers for them. So we've got a list of resources here, but there's more. There's absolutely more in the actual guidance document itself. And I just wanted to keep you up to date on next steps. So all the webinars are there now on the HOLEX website so that you can look at them, you can see them, and you've also got the guidance documents that go with them. There is a lot of annexes, which means you can cut and paste and change them into your own policy. So first of all, we feel with this project, we've now got a real bank of good information to help and support you. The next part of it is we'll be going out in a few weeks' time with training the trainers, and we'll be offering a program through November, December, and now January. We've taken on board about 16 different individuals who are probably the best of the best in the sector, who are willing to offer 1 hour and a half sessions. And we'll have a little mini prospectus, and people will be able to actually join. We keep the classes to around 25 so that they can be interactive. Many of you were eager last week, or was it the week before now, when Barry Wren, Baz, wrote out to you all saying, would you be interested in forming a digital community? He had about 90 responses. So Barry will be doing that as part of the legacy of this project, and he's going to manage something we haven't tried before, but a closed site on Facebook so that you can easily share activities. And at the end of this week, we'll be offering a digital ACE advisory service where if there are key parts of your work that you feel you need support on, whether that's writing your policy, whether it's looking at your safeguarding, whether it's looking at infrastructure or parts of infrastructure, then we will be offering this digital advisory service where we've now appointed 4 or 5 digital advisors who will be there to come and do half days with you to develop a topic with you and the senior team. So we need to really thank UFI for this particular project, UFI VOC Trust. They've been brilliant at funding us and holding our hand for this particular series of webinars. And I'm hoping that you have all felt that it was really worthwhile. We will now have, sorry, one more thing I wanted to say. We need to put pressure on people. We talked about capital, we need to talk about funding, we need to talk about the future. Therefore, I've been pressing DfE and the mayoral combined authorities on these particular areas. We do need more help and support. You've been wonderful at doing it as a self-help, but we now need for them to recognise the work that you're doing and to ensure that we've got the right restructures in place to help you go forward. If you can think of anything else that you feel that you need at this time, please write to me directly. Don't go and do a whole exchange and go to 600 people, but if you could just email to me directly on other things you think I should be pressurising DfE and the mayoral combined authorities over, that would be brilliant. I think there's a golden opportunity at the moment and we need to use that. And then lastly, I'd like to thank everybody that was on my working group. You've all been absolutely brilliant. And Caroline for stepping in at the last moment to help me actually finish and write the document. Thank you for that. It's been brilliant working with you. And I hope to see lots of you again online for probably something else now.
Thank you. So we're just going to send the feedback out and then that's it, and have a good afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.